Does cable quality even matter these days? Yes, but not in the way you may think. Hi, I'm Creative Minds. For those of you who don't know me, I'm an audio engineer and songwriter with a focus on helping smaller acts. I've worked with hundreds of clients from a variety of genres and sizes. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. You see, some people love to debate that some cables sound better than others. That's just BS in my opinion. The preamp has way more influence in the sound than a cable ever will. What a good cable will do is be sturdy, easy to repair, and not add noise to the signal. So today I'll be looking at just that. Do cables have a sound? Do cheaper cables add noise, or are they the same as more expensive cables like Mogami? To test this, I plugged 7 different cables into my Apollo X4 interface. And I used various preamp settings to boost noise and see if there was any color change between different cables. So what cable brands are we looking at today? I'll be looking at a variety of brands from Gotham, Canare, and of course Mogami. But I also have some stuff in here that I've had in my toolkit forever that I just use as like auxiliary cables that usually won't be recorded, such as for talkback or headphone mixes. Always good to have extra cables around too. Anyway, these brands are Shure, Proco Dynamic, and some brand I got at a store at some point called Strukture. You can find them on Amazon for really cheap, and they're also often like the store brand cables that you'll find in local retailers. Now let's look at these cables in a bit more detail. We have the Mogami Gold Official cable, which is really just Mogami 2534 cable and packaged very expensively, because I also have a Redco custom built cable that uses also Mogami 2534 cable, and also have a Canare CNR L4E6S cable made by Sari Cables. And they have everything you'd expect. Neutrik connectors, a really strong cable that's easy to open and repair thanks to those Neutrik connectors. So those are all the same more or less. There's not much difference in build quality, I find. Next, we have the brand World's Best Cables. I got them off Amazon, and I've actually been buying them for a while. They're a store that sells on Amazon, and they sell high-end cables for a fraction of the price of other places. See affiliate links in the description. They used to make cables from Mogami and Canare with Neutrik connectors, but have since switched to Gotham cables with Amphenol connectors. I've heard about Gotham forever now, and only good things, so I'm like, why not? So the ones that I have are made using specifically the Gotham GAC 4/1 cables, which are quad shielded cables. The cables feature quad wire connections with good shielding. The Amphenol connectors are also pretty solid, though I do prefer the Neutrik connectors overall, as they feel a little bit more sturdy. I wouldn't worry about it too much. The cable itself also feels a little cheaper in quality than the Canare or the Mogami, but not enough to mean anything to me. I have a bunch of 10-foot and 15-foot cables by this brand. So before buying these cables, I was a little concerned about the quality control from a random company off of Amazon, so I decided to look the company up. It seems they're based in Australia and have offices in Sri Lanka, UK, and the US. It seems the majority of their cables are built in Sri Lanka though. I don't know what to think about that, but they are very much up to my standards, so that was good. I can't say the same about the Strukture cable though. It feels cheap, there's no easy way to open it up for repair, and while the cable is super thick, it doesn't feel great, which is really important during setup. Lastly, we have the Proco cable. This brand is pretty popular in retail stores as a cheaper alternative to Mogami and other brands. They make a ton of stuff. This specific model is their Dynamic 223B. This stuff is pretty cheap. I'm just gonna throw it out there. For 46 bucks, you can get 100 feet of bulk cable on Amazon. So this cable has Neutrik connectors, so it is easily repairable, which is good. But upon looking up the cable on Sweetwater, I noticed that it isn't a quad cable. I don't believe the Shure or the Strukture is either. So what's a quad cable? A quad cable has 2 wires per connector and a ground versus 1 wire in a ground. This determines sound quality for a variety of reasons. The twisted pair design allows for a lot of electromagnetic and RF interference rejection. So if you've ever heard the radio when you crank your guitar amp or heard other weird strange sounds, yeah, that's RF noise. It's annoying, it's bad. Electromagnetic noise is really just if you have your cable near like a power outlet or adapter or something where there's a lot of electricity going through. But we'll get into the RF and electromagnetic tests in another video, so subscribe for that. Anyway, enough just talking about the cables. Let's get into the tests. I did a total of 4 tests with my Apollo X4 preamps. I started with the default 10 decibels of gain. Then I cranked it to its maximum of 65 decibels. But wait, with an Apollo, I can add in unison preamps. These can boost the gain more and be cleaner in the process. So I threw on a Neve 1084 emulation and boosted the gain to its maximum of 80 decibels. And lastly, I applied a pad for 20 dB of gain reduction, which is effectively negative 10 decibels of gain. Now I feel this is as much of a test of the Apollo X4 preamps as it is about the cables. As you'll see, the preamps are pretty noisy when really boosted without the preamp emulation. Now in just a moment, I'm going to play all these clips. Right now, you can't really see the waveform because everything is so quiet. So I'm going to zoom in. All right, here we go. Now we have something to look at. As you could tell, with the 65 decibels of gain and 80 decibels of gain, it is something significant because there's so much gain. And with the others, there's just nothing. And I think that's great. Probably means I'm not getting any RF interference or anything out of the ordinary because I'm not in a major part of the city. I'm sure if I was downtown, that might be a little different. Anyway, let's listen. All right, cool. So this reveals a lot of the noise in the cables. So you won't believe this, but I was playing them all together. That's the noise combined. So now we're going to go through individually with just the 65 decibels of gain and see what the differences are. So I have this nice thing over here where I lined up all of them next to each other. So they're going to go back to back. You're going to hear the differences. Put on headphones, crank it a little bit. I'm going to shut up. So if you were listening carefully, when it got down here to the structure on the last one, it had a bit of whine to it. Everything else seemed pretty consistent, which was surprising to me. The worst here is the structure. There's a bit of noise that's like a whine, and it has a different tone than the rest. The Proco was good, but it had a subtle tone shift. Nothing awful, not going to really affect recordings compared to the structure. I am more concerned about a cable that has a whine than anything else in this test. I also want to note that the Strukture cable has a path similar to that of the Shure to my interface, which does cross paths with some power cables. The rest are on top of my desk. I doubt this plays a major issue into anything except for the fact the Shure doesn't have this issue. They're literally next to each other on the same run. They usually go to my headphone amplifier across the room. If that subtle run is an issue, I'd say it's a big failing for the Strukture. Not that the whole run isn't crossing paths with power cables, but the Shure and the Strukture are close enough to each other that they don't have this whine, but the Strukture does. So regardless of the problem, it is definitely the cable than any other factor. But to make sure of this, in my next video, I will be testing these cables and how they do next to power cables and surge protectors. If it's a good cable, nothing will change. So what did I learn from these tests so far? Well, for one, don't cheap out on cables. If you buy a store brand, you are rolling the dice, as they are often Strukture or Proco. Proco seems to be decent, while Strukture is clearly not. So check the actual cable before buying, as both of these companies sell to retailers and Strukture will often market as the store brand cable. Strukture will also often hide the brand name on the packaging, but the cable itself will say Strukture. Avoid. Next, price doesn't reflect quality. Mogami Gold is a freaking ripoff, even if you find it for cheap used, like I did. Redco sells Mogami with nitric connectors for $33 for 10 feet, plus tax and shipping. It's $80 for the Mogami Gold of the same length. It's the same cable. By comparison with the world's best cables, the 10-foot cables are just $16.50 each when bought in 4-packs. Yes, just $16.50. That's just as expensive as a Strukture cable for pro quality. Granted, the cable and connectors aren't exactly the same as the Mogamis, but it's way better than the Strukture cables. That being said, my Canary cables from Sorry Cables goes for $55 for 10 foot. So a bit cheaper than Mogami, but still not cheap. That being said, you are supporting a small independent business. I know the owner and will have a link to their shop in the description. And as far as I know, it's just them doing their work versus an international enterprise. Another great shop for building cables is Pro Audio LA. They were my go-to while I lived in LA, since they were affordable and I didn't have to pay for shipping. For a 10-foot cable, it's $41.75. Now, all these prices are before tax and shipping, so that might change depending on where you live or if you have tax. I'm in Portland, so there's no tax, and shipping is pretty minimal overall. Pro Audio LA also offers other quality brands, including Canare and Gotham, and a couple other brands I don't know well. So, is it time to switch? I've been using these top brands forever now, and I always rely on them. Maybe I don't need to anymore. Maybe I can save money. Two other quality factors I'm interested in but didn't really touch on in this video is how easy is it to wrap, and does it kink easily when laid around? These two are something I have ran into a lot with cheaper cables, but rarely notice with the higher end stuff. I'm not planning on making videos on these, but it is something to consider when making purchases. Cables should last a lifetime. Some of these cables in the video I've had over 2 decades now, and as you can tell, they still function just fine. That being said, I have thrown away defective cables from a few brands in my life, and these 2 brands didn't make the cut because of that. Cheap Hosa cables and Monster cables. I refuse to buy either of these. With Hosa cables, I do want to note that their higher end quad products are probably just fine, but don't buy their cheap stuff ever. They break easily and they're just not good quality. And because I was burned so many times when I was younger, I don't really use these cables anymore. 2 key things I look for these days when shopping for cables: unscrewable connectors to repair, as I have repaired several cables by soldering them and thus extending their life, and quad connectivity to reduce noise and interference if I have a gig in a busy environment. Your cables are the backbone of your studio space. Don't skimp on them. If you have any questions about audio, feel free to check out my Twitch live streams at Creative Minds, where I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay creative.